Right, what's going on, everyone? What's the best line to one line? Just keep it rolling. I need to do a meditation quickly, that. Meditation. How I go about mastering and just showing you everything. Oh, fuck off, you. Right. Let's dive in. Fuck. Okay. Right. Welcome to my brand new series on YouTube, The Making Of, where I'm going to be breaking down exactly how I make my songs, how I go about mixing, mastering, and just getting everything sounding the way that it needs to sound. Let's dive into it.
Static, the girl on the microphone rapping, so now it's time to move on my session.
So getting into things now, I'm going to be dissecting how I've gone about making my song, What You Waiting For, which is coming out on In Love Records, on the 1st of November. So hopefully by then you'll be watching this video. But yeah, let's get straight into it. So jumping straight in, I've got a standard sort of 909 sounding kick, and I've routed that into a bus channel. I didn't really need to do that, but at the time I had laid it with another kick. So it's routed into the first. Yeah, so the first plugin is going to be an EQ. Now I've taken about 30 hertz off the bottom end, just to make sure it's nice and round when I'm getting round to mastering. I've also ducked at about 1 dB around 200 hertz, just because in kicks more often than not I've got mud around that area. Not every kick, so make sure you're listening to what you're doing and don't just do it because I've told you to. But kicks do tend to have mud around that region, so it might be something to think about doing when you're mixing your kick. And also just taking off some of the top end that I didn't really need, because you don't, like, some tracks you want a bit of top end, but other times, in this case I didn't. So I'm going to go into playing you the drums from the start of the track, which is going to sound a little something like this. Right, so as you can tell, they're pretty straightforward. It's not an awful lot going on, but there is quite a lot layered there. So I tend to lay my drums. It's not going too mad because you're going to mess the sound of your mix up, but as long as you're picking and choosing carefully to get a nice balanced mix, that's what you need to be doing. So I lay a lot of my drums. Some of them are bounce, some of them are MIDI. Yeah, you got the hi-hats. You got these hats, which I've bounced down into this stem called Techie Hats New. So I'm going to go ahead and mute these two. And so that's these. Oh no, it's not. I'm talking out my arse. Sorry, I'm talking out my arse. Hang on. So yeah, so they're the first set of hats. Nice little percussive loop going over the top. Clap there. Another hat. This is this sound here is a really top end clap, just to give that clap a bit of crunch. Just so it's just so the transient's punching nice through the mix down. So yeah, they're the drums. So I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna play the track, and as we go along, each new bit of instrument or bit of production that comes into the track, I'm just gonna break down how and why it's there, sort of thing. Right, straight away in with the tune, you've got the bass line coming in. Now, pretty much the whole, like the stand-up thing of this track is just the rawness of the bass, and it's like good drums and good bass with a little bit of musicality into it. So the bass is coming from a synthesizer called Subboom Bass. I fucking swear by it. It's an unbelievable plugin. Really, really, really good bass plugin. So I'll show you my setup here. Again, not gone too mental with the mixing. I've got an EQ here taking off, I believe, 30 hertz. Let me just get to the bass.
Let's go to what you waiting for.
So I've got an EQ here taking off about 30 hertz, a little dip at 134 just to take away a bit of mud, and then cut off the all the highs. Not all the highs, but just done it so it's nicely tamed. And then the second EQ, I'm taming even more. Yeah, just mixing it nicely so that it bounces off the kick. When you're starting out a mix down, I suppose I was going to say just in house, but in any genre of music, the kick and the bass need to bounce off each other and need to complement each other. There can't really be any clashing, because when it gets time to mix, that's when you're going to come unstuck and you're going to have a lot of problems. So yeah, so there it's already sitting nicely in with the kick, but just to give it that extra bit of space and so that it moves throughout the track nice, I put a sidechain compressor on the top so that each time the kick, obviously some of you may know what a sidechain is, but for those of you that don't, when the transient is being played, it's going to duck through the compressor, and so that your kick doesn't get muddled up with your bass. So every time the kick hits, it's just ducking the bass line. So I'll show you what that looks like. It's here. It's called a R compressor, Waves, really good quality plug-in. So the attack is really short on this, and the release is tailored to the way that I wanted it to be. Ratio of about 2. Yeah, and minus 12 on the threshold. Not going too mad. You'll see. Just enough so that it punches through nice. Okay, so just gonna have a little listen to the track now, innit? See how it goes. There you go. Now that stab, that is you'll have heard that on a load of other tunes. And when I was making this song, I was dreading using it. I was thinking, I don't want to sound like everyone else, but sometimes you've got to use the sample that works best, and it was just a vibe when I was making it. So this is an old, there is so much processing on this, but this is an old school hardcore sample from like the 90s. And basically my pal gave me this hardcore pack, and it's just been on there, and I've heard like the likes of Salada and other people using it, but I've been trying to stay away from it, but I couldn't keep my hands to myself for this one. So what I've done is I've put it into a sampler, in this case the Native Instruments Massive Machine rather, and I've dragged it in a sampler and just played my own riff. Alright, so basically, as you'll find, when you put something in a sampler, like it gives you a lot of freedom, especially if it doesn't even have to be high quality. As long as there's a vibe there, you can go in and mix it down and get it sounding good later. But so straight away, that's a vibe. Like, it's just one of them iconic sounds. So I went about playing my own riff, which we'll get to later on in the track, and just a lot of processing. So we get stuck in straight away. So basically, with these old school sounds, they was recorded in a time where people weren't really focused on if it was really in key or not. They was just getting off their nut and just making good music. But in today's standards, everything needs to be in key. So straight away I had to pitch this down 50, not semitone cents, which would equate to half a semitone, just to get it in key with the rest of the music, because it needs to be. And then straight after that, you're going into an EQ. Anything that's not kick and bass, this ain't 100%, but most things that are not kick and bass, you want to be taking the bottom end out. So like, say 100 plus hertz. So this is like a synth, this is a stab sound. So I've chopped the bass off. Let me get the EQ up. I've chopped the bass off. I'm boosting slightly around 7, probably I should have done 7 to 7, so from around 700 to 1000 hertz is where the mids are really going to pop, especially if you're playing chords or using synths and stabs. That's where you're going to maybe want to boost a little bit. Ducking around 3000, 4000, there's a load of shit around that region in the top end. You're going to come across that when you're mixing hi-hats and stuff as well. You may want to dip a little bit, and then just boosting the highs, so boosting it, just a mixture of boosting and reducing to cut it short. And then I've got a stereo meter. When you're getting your tracks played in clubs, everything's going to be mono. So if you've got a super stereo sounding sample, then you might want to put it in mono like I've done here. And then CLO vocals, I know what you're thinking, Charlo, why are you putting a vocal plug-in on a synth? Because it sounds a bollocks. The reverb on it's lovely, the slap delay is lovely, and the built-in EQ is good as well. Everything about it makes it sound rich and nice. So I've also got a CLA vocals, as you can see there now. Just the way that it's set up, I must have tweaked it to my liking. And then next we've got a H delay. Now this is one of the best delay plugins going, because you've got a preset here. I haven't put it on ping pong, which actually makes the sound as it's delaying come through like bounce through left and right speaker, which is good. I don't know why I haven't got it on. Echo, just a simple, like, I don't know, after this you probably should have taken off a few things, but an echo. And then last but not least, a filter, because I put a filter on most things just so I've got that little bit extra bit of control when I'm mixing and when I'm fading things in and out of the mix. Okay, well, that was a long one, wasn't it? Bloody hell, that was a fucking long one. Right, so in with the track. Right, so now we're into the first sort of build up of the tune, and straight away you can hear the whole thing with the track is old school, so you can hear the break beat behind it, which is for Doug Lazy back in the day, like where this break is. And I will play you the two breaks that I've laid in now, which are these two. Hold tight a minute. Yeah. To be fair, not really much processing at all, just EQ. When you're using these old school breaks and samples, there's so much mud in the bottom end. So I've chopped off 30 there, ducked around 100 just to give it a bit of a cleaner sound. And I think pretty much the same with the other one, just chopped off a bit of low end. So yeah, then we've also got your signature, got your effects, and you've got your effects coming in, and you've also got the snares. Now the snare drum, pretty simple, like standard, just as an informative one for the people that don't know. Yeah, you've got your snares lined up like this. And I usually have them just with a filter, automated filter, so that it's creating an effect, like it's building up, like you're coming to, like it's going to drop, something's going to drop. So it sounds a bit sound like this, just to give it that effect, like it's building up to something. See the automations there. And then I'm putting a crash on. So that's pretty common. Like on every 8 or 16 bars, I'm dropping a crash there. Right. So here, as you can see, there's a new bit of percussion that's been added into the track, and it's called a rim. Now, what I've done here, I've played it into my native instruments, and then I've bounced it down because I can't have too many of them open and running because it will do your CPU up. So I've just bounced it, and the pattern sounds like this. Just a nice little pattern to keep the drums rolling. Again, nothing like boaty in your face standing out. It's just everything's nice coming in, a bit of rhythm to keep the groove, so you don't get bored of the groove. Waiting for. Right, Another thing that we've missed. How could I have missed it? The vocal. What are you waiting for? Now, the vocal is just, again, like every element in this track had to fit together like a glove. Like everything about it is old school and 90s rave, like not even 90s, just old school rave, and his vocal suited the role perfectly. Let me just get the vocal isolated. Yeah, so straight away here on the first build up, I've got it coming in filtered in nice. Most things that are coming in and out are going to be filtered in and out. As you can see by the automation, I've got a few different bits filtered in and out, just to give it that smoothness, so that it doesn't sound jumping, it doesn't sound like anything's nagging your ear. So yeah, that's coming in filtered. Straight away, it's being dropped down one semitone to fit the key of the song. And there's actually two of these on for no reason, which is, I know, silly. So it's the first bit of EQing is I'm taking away the bass, I'm ducking it at around 300 and 3000. Problematic areas, potentially problematic areas in your mix down, especially with old school screechy vocals. They're going to have some bad tones in that area that you're going to want to duck. And then just, is it a high cut? I'll tell you what it is. I always get them mixed up. It's a high cut, so you want a higher cut filter just to make sure the top end is nice and smooth. And then for this time, I'm using CLO vocals where it should be used on a vocal, but it's just that good of a plugin that I sometimes will be dropping it on a synth sound. So yeah, CLO vocal setup, large reverb, all the works, a bit of EQing. Not really touched the EQing, to be fair, it's mostly flat, but it just still gives it, some plugins give it that bit of richness that you need. And then last but not least, the filter. As you know, as you can see, it's coming in there, filtering in, so nice and smooth. And then now we are going to be coming into the second breakdown here. A nice little stadium applaud or crowd there, just to give it some energy when you're in the club, because when you're in a dance, little effects like that is going to make the extra bit of difference. I know it's a bit, I don't know what the word would be, cliche or thing, but believe me, when that bit drops in, it just gives it that bit of like atmosphere. Do you know what I'm saying? So little things like that you might want to pay attention to. Effects, they do make the difference when selected properly. All right, let's continue with it. I don't actually know whether I had this sample in the main mix, but it sounds good. Right, so as you heard on the drop there was a clap. I think it was 4 claps hitting on the drop. Energy, high, it's energy. It adds that bit of energy into the song that you're going to want. As the build up and drops progress, you want to be adding more into them and making them a bit more diverse, so that it don't sound all the same. So I'll show you the claps, what I've done here. Oh, and some cowbells as well. So the cowbells are here, just like an 808 cowbell, and the claps, brethren, clap fill. Like whatever that was, I don't know if that was like 8 or something, but just to give it a bit of a smack on the drop. I've pre-bounced them there. That's a clap that I've probably worked on over the last 2 years. Like when you get your sounds, you've got them already bounced for you. So yeah, the clap fill, loads of them on a drop. Yeah. Nice little 808 snare as well, just adding to the groove there. Everything I'm doing now is just adding that little bit more to the groove, making it more. Oh, do you know what I've added as well? I've kept the basically I've kept the Doug Lazy break, that old school break that I had in the breakdown, I've now carried that on. I've looped that and carried that on in the drop, and it adds energy to the track. It's like carrying on through into the drop. Now, as you can see, it's called Matronics, this one here. I've put it on a different channel because when it's in with the rest of the drums, it needs to be EQ'd differently. So I'll show you how that's gone down now. I've just really tightened up the bottom end and put a higher pass on there, and I've also side changed it. I'm talking bollocks today, aren't I? I've side chained it to the clap because again, anything that's clashing, EQ, if EQ don't work, then side chain it to whatever it's clashing to, and you'll probably get the result that you want to get in terms of mixing and getting it sounding nice. So yeah, that's added a load of good vibes into the drop again. So I'm just going to play it now. There's a snare there coming. It's adding to the groove, constantly adding to the groove. There's a lot building up here, there's a lot coming up, rising up. The new synth. Right, loads to jump in there with. The first thing, the first major thing being I've played a melody with the hardcore rave stab. So previously I've just been dropping a note on the drop just to give it a bit of thump. Now I've actually played a melody. So the melody is this on its own. That's what it sounds like on its own. It's just a groovy little melody, and then again, a lot of processing has gone into this now because we're using samples that are 20 years old and sound shit. So you need to do a lot of work to them. First thing being, again, pitching it down. Oh, I've just gone through how I've done that. Don't take no notice. So yeah, straight into this bit here. I've got a couple of little samples, which I'm going to show you now. I've got coming in. 97. Which are just like little samples I've nicked from I think it was a 90s, like a scratch thing, like a 90s scratch a cappella, like DJs would mix into other songs to obviously do their scratching with. I've just sampled them. The crowd applause working really nicely there, giving it some energy. So this is the final drop. This is where it all comes together. This is going to be the most potent drop of the whole song. And by this point, on this last drop, you want to have everything in there without it sounding messy. So the drums are at full potency. We've got the rims in there. We've got the cowbells in there. We've got the added snares. We've got everything in there, making sure it's nice and fat for the last drop. Bassline, of course, same sort of setup as the previous drop, where you've got the claps hitting on the drop here, so it goes. So the claps are adding the energy. So you just got a lot of energy, which is coming into the tune here. And then that is pretty much a wrap for the song. I mean, cowbells are nice there. They just bounce off the groove. Everything in the track is bouncing off each other, and it's all complementing each other really nice. To be honest with you, that's a wrap. Like, that's pretty much how I composed the song. Obviously, composing and mixing are two different things. From this point onwards, I went back to the mix 100 times, got everything sounding the way that it needed to sound. And with my productions, I actually build my production into a mastering chain. So around 3/4 way finished through the song, I would then start to set up a mastering chain. It's just the way that I do it. I find that I get a better sound. Now, that ain't probably what you should do. You should probably make sure you get a nice mix down. Obviously, the better your mix down, the easier the master's going to be. I know that, but I find it gives me a bit of flexibility. Just be getting the sound right. Like, if you bounce your mix down off, you've got to keep opening projects and doing this and tweaking that. As long as it ain't taking up too much CPU, I find that if I build the tune into a mastering chain, it gives me a lot of flexibility. So straight into the mastering chain. Now the computer might throb out now because I'm putting it through a lot of fucking pressure. That's it. See my man, he's got the words for me. He's putting it through a lot of pressure with the CPU because I'm also recording my screen at the same time. So first things first, I've got something called a linear phase EQ. I ain't gonna go on like a technical bod. It does something. I know that a lot of mastering engineers use a linear phase EQ instead of a standard EQ because I think you get smoother curves or you get a better sound with it. I'm probably talking rubbish, but really minimal EQ in here. I've just literally taken off 30 hertz and 17,000 hertz from the top. So I'm just making sure that's nice and rounded off for the first plug-in, and then I'm going to be giving away the powerful mastering setup, which is basically might not make sense and may not work, but it works for me. It's my own mastering setup. So I stack 2 to 3 compressors, Waves SSL compressors. Now the first one is going to have attack around 3, and the second one is going to have a slower attack. So the first one, and bearing in mind these 2 compressors ain't going to be ducking a lot, they're just going to be doing their own little bit. Nothing's overworking here. The first compressor's probably going to be ducking around 2 dB, the second one probably about 2 dB as well. So it's nothing going mad. It's just gradual, nice compression. So the first one is has got a quicker attack than the second, than the last one. Reason being, that's my little formula. That's how I've got it sounding good. So look, how silly is that? The first one ain't even doing nothing, but I swear to God it is. It just adds a sound to it. But the second one is actually reducing. But again, not by a lot, by something like 3 dB. It's not a crazy, it's not getting squashed. I'm making sure everything's sounding the way it needs to sound. And then I've got a stereo imager next on the channel, making sure that my bass is always in mono, just because that's what most clubs are dealing with now. And if you're doing it somewhere like Ministry, where it's got an unbelievable stereo system, but you want to make sure your song caters to most clubs, not just Ministry of Sound, as good as it is. So the mids, the higher mids and the highs, I'm going to be boosting slightly. Nothing major. Again, I'm not going mad, I'm not doing nothing drastic. It's just all little tweaks that are going to make your mix sound a little bit better. And then a filter, so that I've got a bit of control and a bit of I can control the energy, because throughout the track, just before the yeah, look, you can see how much automation I've got here. Actually, it's not too much compared to some tunes that I do, but I can control the energy when it drops. So on each breakdown, on each build up, I'm going to be chopping off about 100 hertz just before the drop, and then kicking it back in to normal, just to give it that impact that it needs. And then I've got an EQ on here, which is slightly boosting the highs and the high mids, and just ducking around 1,000. I think that little ducking around 1,000 hertz area is just to rein the clapping. I think it was getting on my nerves a little bit, the sound. And then last but not least, the limiter, which is what is going to get your track loud. Or, you know, I mean, that's the tool that you need to get your track sounding loud. And you're only going to get it sounding loud and balanced if your mix is good and you've done the right sort of compression. You can't just whack a limiter on a down and expect it to sound good. That's not the get out of jail free card by any means. It's a tool. It's a powerful tool, but everything else needs to be in place. So here I've got presets, and I'm a bit of an unorthodox character, so I've used a hip hop preset. This one just gives me a lot of nice weight in the bottom end, whereas I find some limiters I use or some presets, you lose a lot of the bottom end. Like your tune was sounding chunky, but it loses the bottom end as you limit it, but this one keeps the bottom end nice and round. This is just a preset that I use. It's the FabFilter limiter. And yeah, I've got it +9 gain. And I don't know whether this is going to, I'm not going to play, because at the end of this video I'm going to run the track properly so you can listen to what it sounds like. But this is basically what it looks like. So I'm going to be limiting to about there with all the compression and EQ and everything. That is what gives it the sound. So I believe that is a wrap for this song. I've got meditation. I've got to do meditation. Right, so that is a wrap for this tune now. I want to thank everyone for tuning into the video. If you did find this video informative, then drop it a like, drop it a comment, because there's going to be a lot more coming and a lot more content and footage on the way. Thank you very much.
Static, the girl on the microphone rapping, so now it's time to move on my session.